Bhagavate Ya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vyasa Uvacha Iti Bruvanam Samstuya Muninam Dirghasatrinam Vriddha Kulpati Sutam Bhavicha Shaunako Bravit.
On hearing Sutta Goswami speak thus, Shaunaka Muni, who was the elderly land leader of the rishis engaged in that prolonged sacrificial ceremony, congratulated Sutta Goswami by addressing him as follows.
Shaunaka Uvacha Sutta Sutta Mahabhaga Vadano Vadatam Vara Tim Punya Yadaha Bhagavan Chukaha.
Shaunaka said, O Sutta Goswami, you are the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite. Please relate the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which was spoken by the great and powerful sage Shukadeva Goswami.
Kasmin yuge pravritteyam sthane vakena hetuna kutha sanchoditah Krishna vrittavan sahitam munihi.
In what period and what place was this fast begun, and why was this taken up? From where did Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, the great sage, get the inspiration to compile this literature?
Tasya putro mahayogi samadrin nirvikalpakaha ekanta matirun nidro guru mudha iveyate.
His Vyasadeva's son was a great devotee, an equibalanced monist whose mind was always on monism. He was transcendental to mundane activities, but being unexposed, he appeared like an ignorant person.
Drishvayantam rishim atmajam apyanatnam devayo hriya paridadhur nasuttasya chitram tadviksha pritchati muno jagadustavasti Sri Pum Vidhanatu Sutasya Vivikta Drishte.
While Sri Vyasadeva was following his son, beautiful young damsels who were bathing naked, covering their bodies with cloth, although Sri Vyasadeva himself was not naked, but they had not done so when his son had passed. The sage inquired about this, and the young ladies replied that his son was purified, and one looking at them made no distinction between male and female. But the sage made no such distinctions.
Kathamalakshitah paura sampraptah kuru jangalan unmata mukha jalavan vicharan gavaye.
How was he, Srila Shukadeva, the son of Vyasa, recognized by the citizens when he entered the city of Hastinapur, now Delhi, after wandering into the provinces of Kuru and Jangala, appearing like a madman, dumb and retarded?
Katham va pandave yasya rajarsharmunina saha samvara sambhuta tata yatrashe satvati shruti.
How did it so happen that King Parikshit met this great sage, making it possible for this great transcendental essence of the Vedas, Bhagavatam, to be sung to him?
Sagoto hanamatam hi ग्रहेषु गृहमेधिनाम् अवेक्षाते महाभागः तिथि कुर्वांस्तदाश्रमाम्.
He, Shukadeva Goswami, was accustomed to stay at the door of a householder long enough for the cow to be milked, and he did this just to sanctify this the residence.
Abhimanyu sutam suta Prahurbhagavatomam tasya janma mahascharyam karmani jagrinihinaha.
It is said that Maharaj Parikshit is a great first-class devotee of the Lord, and that his birth and activities are all wonderful. Please tell us about him.
Sasamrat kasya vaheto Pandunamana Prayopavishtu Gangayam Anadrityadiratshriyam.
He was a great emperor and possessed all the opulences of his acquired kingdom. He was so exalted that he was increasing the prestige to the Pandu dynasty. Why did he give up everything to sit down on the bank of the Ganges and fast until death?
Namanti yatpadane kirtimatmana Shivaya hani yadanani shatrava Katham savira Shrimangadustajam Yuveshtatoshtamaho sahashvi.
He was such a great emperor that all his enemies would come and bow down at his feet and surrender all their wealth for their own benefit. He was full of youth and strength and possessed insuperable kingly opulences. Why did he want to give up everything, including his life?
Shivaya lokasya bhavaya bhutaye ya uttama shloka parayana jana jivanti natmarthamaso parashrayam murmocho nirvidya kutha kalevaram.
Those who are devoted to the cause of the personality of Godhead live only for the welfare, development, and happiness of others. They do not live for any selfish interest. So even though the Emperor Parikshit was free from all attachment to worldly possessions, how could he give up his mortal body, which was shelter for others?
Tatsarvam nasamachakshva Prashto yadehar kinchana Manye tvam vishaye vacham Snatamanyatra chandasat.
We know that you are expert in the meanings of all subjects except some portions of the Vedas, and thus you can clearly explain the answers to all the questions we have just put to you.
Suta uvacha dvapare samanuprapte tritiye yuga paryaye jata parashara yogi vashavyam kalaye hare.
Sutta Goswami said, when the second millennium overlapped the third, the great sage Vyasadeva was born to Parasha in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu.
Sakatachit saraswatya upasprisya jalam shuchihi vivikta eka asina uditera vimandale.
Once upon a time, he, Vyasadeva, as the sun rose, took his morning ablution in the waters of Saraswati and sat alone to concentrate.
Varavara jnana sarishihi kalena vyaktaram sthiram hasa yuga dharma vyatikaram Praptam bhuvi yuge yuge.
The great sage Vyasadeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on the earth in different ages due to unseen forces in the course of time. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So nice. Pavani and Meenakshi. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. Sanskrit and English translation. Very nicely reading. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Well done. Hope to see you again sometimes.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Once again. Beautiful recited. Beautiful recited. Chitna Mataji is commenting. Okay, so we will share the screen once again for today's verse. Okay, so we're starting fourth chapter today with the first verse. Read the verse in the translation purport and we'll discuss. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. So chapter 4 entitled Appearance of Sri Narada. Text 1. Vyasa Uvacha Iti Brahmanam Samstuya Muninam Dirghasatrinam Viddha Kulapati Sutam Bhava Richaha Shaunako Bravit. Word for word. Vyasaha Vyasadev Uvacha said Iti thus. Brahmanam speaking, Samsutya congratulating, Muninam of the great sages, Dirgha prolonged, Satrinam of those engaged in the performance of sacrifice, Vriddha elderly, Kulapatihi head of the assembly, Sutam unto Suta Goswami, Bahu Richaha learned, Shaunakaha of the name Shaunaka, Abravit addressed. Translation purport by Srila Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada. Vyasadeva said, on hearing Suta Goswami speak thus, Saunaka Muni, who was the elderly learned leader of all the rishis engaged in that prolonged sacrificial ceremony, congratulated Suta Goswami by addressing him as follows. Purport. In a meeting of learned men, when there are congratulations or addresses for the speaker, the qualifications of the congratulator should be as follows. He must be the leader of the house and an elderly man. He must be vastly learned also. Sri Shaunaka Rishi had all these qualifications, and thus he stood up to congratulate Sri Suta Goswami when he expressed a desire to present Srimad Bhagavatam exactly as he heard it from Shukadev Goswami and also realized it personally. Personal realization does not mean that one should, out of vanity, attempt to show one's own learning by trying to surpass the previous Acharya. He must have full confidence in the previous Acharya, and at the same time, he must realize the subject matter so nicely that he can present the matter for the particular circumstances in a suitable manner. The original purpose of the text must be maintained. No obscure meaning should be screwed out of it, yet it should be presented in an interesting manner for the understanding of the audience. This is called realization. The leader of the assembly, Sonaka, could estimate the value of the speaker, Sri Sutta Goswami, simply by his uttering Yathaditam and Yathamati. And therefore, he was very glad to congratulate him in ecstasy. No learned man should be willing to hear a person who does not represent the original Acharya. So the speaker and the audience were bona fide in this meeting where Bhagavatam was being recited for the second time. That should be the standard of recitation of Bhagavatam so that real purpose can be served without difficulty. Unless this situation is created, Bhagavatam recitation for extraneous purposes is useless labor both for the speaker and for the audience. Hare Krishna. Yeah. So recite the Mangala Saran prayers. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Nadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaisnavamsya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanutam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Avadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanutamsya He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Mukham Karoti Vachalam Panghum Langai Degiram Yatripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarine. Hare Krishna, welcome all on this special Ekadashi day, on a Friday evening. Very auspicious. I feel very blessed to be in assembly of all of you wonderful devotees. And I seek blessings of all of you that I'm able to speak something useful for my own purification, first of all. I know it can be useful to everyone, maybe. Okay, so we are now starting the 4th chapter. We had a wonderful summary yesterday and wonderful recitation of the whole of the 3rd chapter. So this chapter starts with Srila Vyasadeva speaking. And in the previous, it's relevant to go to the previous verse, because on hearing Sutta Goswami speak thus. So, iti bruvanam samstuya muninam nirgasatrinam vriddha kulapati sutam bhava richah shaunatu brave. Vyasadeva said, on hearing Sutta Goswami speak thus. So what was that Sutta Goswami spoke? Just do a little cap. recap of that. Yes. So it says, this is Sutta Goswami speaking. Oh, learned Brahmanas, when Shukadeva Goswami recited Bhagavatam there in the presence of Emperor Parikshit, I heard him with rapt attention. And thus, by his mercy, I learned the Bhagavatam from that great and powerful sage. Now I shall try to make you hear the very same thing as I learned it from him and as I have realized it. And Prabhupada quotes this Yatha Aditam Yatha Mati. As far as my realization. Very interesting point. Like punchline statements. No one can hear with rapt attention unless this one is pure in his mind. So I say that. And no one can have a pure mind unless he has pure actions. And no one can have pure actions unless they follow the four regulative principles. Somewhere else. So carrying on from there, hearing this ecstasy, this is now Sutta Goswami has answered all the previous questions that were asked by the assembly of the sages. Now, towards the end, and before that, obviously, he introduced Bhagavatam, Krishna Sadhama Pagate Dharma Jnana Dhivi Saha Kalo Nashta Dishamesha Purana Adunam. So this is where the Dharma and the Jnana has come now to Srimad Bhagavatam. And now this is Sutta Goswami's in ecstasy. He says that I will now recite the same Bhagavatam, which I heard with rapt attention from Srila Sukadeva Goswami. So with that ecstasy, Saunaka Rishi, who was the head of the sages in the assembly who were on the hearing side, who were the seekers. The speaker is the Sutta Goswami. Seekers are the rishis led by the Saunaka Rishi. He gets in ecstasy as well. And he asks the same question. On hearing this, Saunaka Rishi, who was elderly, learned leader, congratulated him. Congratulated Sutta Goswami by addressing him as follows. The second verse will come in. So there's some very, very powerful points made by Srila Prabhupada in this purport. All the purports are so beautiful. So what do we learn from this purport? We'll try to discuss that. So first of all, the qualification of the speaker, and then we'll discuss the qualification of the person who is addressing the speaker. So this is very important. And we see also in our temples, we see a lot of time when we have some senior speakers coming, we'll have, some senior devotees introducing and speaking some words of glorification. So it's very important. Prabhupada is highlighting, these are the Vaishnava etiquettes. And I was hearing in one class, there is a book also Bhaktivedanta Manor has published as Vaishnava etiquettes. And all of us in the mentorship system, we have to read that Vaishnava etiquette book, and we have to follow and adopt those etiquettes in our lives as to how to deal with the other devotees and how to deal in assembly of devotees and assembly of speakers. All those beautiful points that we need to learn as part of the Vaishnava culture. And what is interesting that I heard was, now that book has been compiled, not that someone spoke about it, like, okay, this is how we should sit, this is how we should walk, this is how we should talk, and all those point that are mentioned there, it is by these great devotees who observe, like Srila Prabhupada observes and he notes all these points, like, so what's really happening? Like in this scenario, it's been observed that Saunaka Rishi, who was the elderly, learned, yeah, he was the one who addresses Sutta Goswami. He is the one who was asking questions previously also uh, on behalf of everyone else. So the behavior of the Vaishnavas, of the great acharyas, is observed by the great devotees, and then they put those etiquettes, those exchange between the devotees, and make that as guideline for us who are uh, trying to be devotees. And that helps us in understanding as to how we should behave. It's very important. Vaishnava etiquettes are very, very important to progress in the spiritual life. And there are many examples, particularly in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you'll find many, many examples of those Vaishnava etiquettes being followed. So we will probably discuss one or two. So the Saunaka Rishi was very learned and he was elderly. So he stands up to congratulate Sutta Goswami. So inspires the speaker to speak. This is one of the other point that I was hearing somewhere before, that when we are in assembly or when we are in a class, how or what type of questions should be asked to the speaker. And this devotee was saying very nicely that he was saying there are different dimensions to the philosophy, and sometimes there could be many ways of looking at it. Many things can be right at the same time, but the listeners or the devotees who are asking the question, they should ask in a way that it uplifts the point that speaker is trying to make. So kind of create a crescendo, now rather than going in another direction or coming up with a completely different point. The listener or the person raising the question should try to encourage and bring the same point with additional dimension or ask relevant questions like that. The same way there will be, again, I was reading the second canto also, how Narad Muni is addressing Lord Brahma, and every canto will follow this, and you can observe this, how the devotees how the questions are being asked by the various um, um, in the various pastimes by the various devotees coming up. Very, very interesting. So something that I was thinking would be useful for us. Other thing is personal realization does not mean that. Yeah. So about the speaker, speaker's realization as well. So what is that? What is the realization? Also is explained here very nicely by Srila Prabhupada. No obscure meaning should be stood out of it, and yet it should be presented in an interesting manner for the understanding of the audience. Just stop this. So, Srila Prabhupada, if we just think about it, how he went to the West at that age, and some of the Prabhupada disciples have been sharing that Prabhupada, and we also hear it when there's so many classes we can hear the videos and the audio classes of Srila Prabhupada. His voice was obviously as elderly, and he also had an accent, a Bengali accent. This was some of his disciples were sharing, and at times those who were listening, they would not be able to grasp fully to what Srila Prabhupada is saying. But Prabhupada's words had so much power that they would be sitting with rapt attention, because everything that Srila Prabhupada spoke was so much relevant and so much as per the time, place, and circumstance. So the speaker should not be just repeating. And this is what I'm just repeating what I've heard. Uh, because this is basically the purpose of this is to get the study. I'm not trying to be a speaker or giving a class, but just together we'll study and share our thoughts. So the speaker should not be speaking like a parrot, but he should be connecting with the listener, with the seekers, the speaker and seeker relationship. So the speaker, should be presenting in a way that is palatable or that is relevant for the current time or the whatever that time, place, and circumstance. Now, Srila Prabhupada, I was coming to that. Srila Prabhupada was speaking to these hippies, and most of them were, like they were early 20s, some of them even younger, not even 20. And they were such young boys and girls. And Srila Prabhupada is 70 at the time. And he's from the east and they're from the west. They're all hippies. They've given up, the normal life, their parent, their homes. And it is said that they would not believe anyone over 30 at the time. But they were willing to do anything for Srila Prabhupada. Anything. And that is the glory of our Srila Prabhupada. How he presented. Like many, many examples. Like in one class I was hearing that this Prabhupada disciple was speaking that Prabhupada was trying to give them the understanding of spiritual life. And they were all hippies, they were on, sort of drugs and LSD at the time. So Prabhupada says, like the spiritual experience is like, like ocean of LSD. Now, those, seekers at the time, and they were listening, and when they heard that, because they could only relate any sort of higher experience to LSD, to drugs. When Prabhupada said that, they were like immediately attracted. Wow, what is that? And obviously, Prabhupada had the priority to present Krishna consciousness in a way that they could get that same experience, and they were willing to just forget and give up everything that they were doing before. So that is the glory of Srila Prabhupada. And other thing like was Prabhupada would always say, what he would say is he's just he's just repeating the words of his spiritual master. Yeah. And it says this is parampara system. Yeah. So a student is just trying to satisfy his immediate acharya or the spiritual master. That is the only qualification that someone should have for advancing in Krishna consciousness. Just repeat what you've heard, but in your own words. So in presenting in our own words, in whatever understanding we get, and we present that, trying to keep the meaning intact. Yeah, the right understanding of the spiritual master, that they are glorious by simply delivering the transcendental message of Krishna as it is. So Prabhupada coming up with Bhagavad Gita as it is. And then he says the ripened fruit is received hand to hand in the disciplic succession. So, and if someone is not in, Prabhupada would repeat so many, if someone is not in disciplic succession, and then the message will not be received, will not make the correct impact in the heart. So the whole idea is when you hear from in the parampara, as Prabhupada is saying in the purport as well, then it will make a difference. It will transform the hearts. So if it is not in parampara, then someone will concoct something, manufacturing their own. Prabhupada used the word manufacture. So preaching as per time, place, and circumstance, and preaching relevant and keeping the meaning intact. And that's what Prabhupada says is realization. Realization is not no obscure meaning. Original purpose of the text is maintained. And out of vanity is not presented in an artificial way. So Actually, there is a pastime, very beautiful pastime. We'll just cover it quickly. From Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is there was a very great devotee at the time, and he would, 2 or 3 times he had interaction with the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he would say certain points which would not align with the previous acharyas. Prabhupada uses this Mahabharata verse, many times, Mahajano yena katha sapanta. So we have to follow in the footsteps of the Mahajan. But this devotee, and he's a great soul, he was a great soul, and he was trying to present in a slightly different way. He would say like, why are we chanting Krishna's name? Because just like a servant should not be taking his master's name, or a wife should not be taking her husband's name, and then why should we be chanting Krishna's name? So he presented, some logical point like that, which is, true in one aspect. But Mahaprabhu immediately rejected and says, Mahaprabhu said to him, because it is the instruction of the Lord to chant his name, so we are chanting to glorify him, man mana bhavat bhakta. So he's asking us to chant his names. So then he was immediately corrected. Then one more time he again came up with some point, and third time he came along and says to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that, actually I've written a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam which is even better than the previous acharya, and it is actually a lot of mistakes that previous acharya had in his commentary that I have corrected in this, so you must read it. So third time when Mahaprabhu used then a little bit stronger words. It says those who do not, follow the, I have to paraphrase it. So someone who's not following the Swami or the husband, it becomes like a vibhichari. Vibhichari means is with the false character or unclean character, something like that. So then he was immediately taken aback, and he, understood. Obviously, after that, Mahaprabhu and the devotee had a great time together, and they became very close associates at the time. And but Mahaprabhu was making a point that we have to always stick to the principle, stick to the philosophy, the essence, and the text should be retained. So that is the quality of speakers. And at the same time, there is instruction from Mahaprabhu himself, like Yara Dekha Tara Khai, Krishna Upadesh, Amar Agya Guru Tara Idesh. Bharata Bhumite Hoila, Manusha Janmayar, Janma Sathaka Kari Kare Para Upaka. So I mean, he's saying that wherever you see, this is the instruction Mahaprabhu was giving to Nityananda, wherever you see, you just, give Krishna Upadesh, just talk about Krishna's teachings. This is my order, this is my instruction to everyone. So we are all hearing, we are all reading and hearing Mahaprabhu's words, Srila Prabhupada's words, so it is also our duty to repeat whatever we've learned, whatever we have realized. Yatha dati, yatha mati, like that. So other aspect that we see that Srila Prabhupada's humility when he was presenting, first he would always say that I'm just repeating, that requires a lot of humility. Even in Chaitanya Charitamrita, like this epitome of humility when Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is presented it so nicely, and when we read through, like he's quoting so many different scriptures and all the Shrutis, Smritis, Vedas, Upanishads, and he was a scholar. Like also there is so much detail of the recipes as well. So it seemed like he was a great chef. He was a great, he knew the art of cooking, the culinary art really well. He was a scholar or what, how he would present himself, like he's saying in the book itself and he's writing it. He says, I'm dumb, I'm deaf, wholly illiterate. So he was at the 90 plus at the time when he was writing Chaitanya Charitamrita. He's like, I'm deaf, I'm dumb, wholly illiterate, worldly minded, and lower than a worm in a stool. This is we can't even match this. We can't even think like this. And we can't imitate the thought. So it's not that they're just speaking for but they're genuinely feeling that. Like Bhakti Vinod Thakur says, Tumi to Thakur, Ami to Kukur, like, you are the Lord and I'm just a dog. I want to be, in one song he says, just want to be, to take birth as a dog in a devotee's family if I have to come back. So that's extreme humility. And Srila Prabhupada would have so much humility. Like one reporter asking Srila Prabhupada, so are you the guru of all? And Prabhupada was, the moment he asked that question, Srila Prabhupada became so grave. And he just said, no, I'm just the servant of everyone. And another conversation, he says, so are you the, he says, are you the top class? Are you the top class? Prabhupada said, no, I'm the fourth class, in some conversation. Prabhupada had such deep humility. So the speaker who can actually transform the heart should have so many different qualities. So many qualities. This is something, and we all, have to at some stage, or whatever little we know, we have the instructions of the parampara that we repeat. So whoever we meet, we repeat these words, what we hear. So we present with this humility, present as it is, and present as per the time, place, and circumstance. This is the instruction for us in the purport. And also, like I was saying before about the seekers, like who are the listeners. Yeah, so there is important that we discuss was that they should have. So in terms of what's happening in the current verse, like Sonaka Rishi is a learned person, is elderly, and well versed in all scriptures. I say Bhava Richa is like the Vedas, the Rig Vedas, and he was learned in all the Vedas, all this Upanishads, everything he knew, and he was asking such questions. And this fourth chapter is entitled the arrival of Srila Narad Muni. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the appearance of Srila Narad. So in one class, someone was also saying like this Bhagavatam, as we come along, as in this chapter, really what's going to happen, just a little bit of covering what is going to happen in this chapter. The questions again are being asked by Shaunaka Rishi. He's going to ask about how did this, at what stage, in which yuga, in what scenario the Bhagavatam was spoken, because Sukadeva Goswami spoke to Sutta Goswami and he was in the assembly and he heard it. So the question will be asked about Parikshit Maharaj. We were just, as they were wonderfully reciting, we heard that the questions are being asked as to how did Parikshit Maharaj meet Sukadeva Goswami. Sukadeva Goswami would not stop more than that time that it takes to get milk in one house. And how come that he stayed, at one place for more than 7 days? So who would not stop for more than, 10, 15 minutes at one place? He stayed there for 7 days. How did the whole thing happen? How did Srila Vyasadeva write this? And so those things, and then towards the end, it will be described as Narad Muni is arriving. Before that, Vyasadeva was a little bit in despondent situation as to he had written the Mahabharata, he's compiled all the Vedas, but his heart was not fulfilled. So this is the beginning of the Bhagavatam in one way. And in the purport, it said the second time is being repeated here in the Naimisharanya. Sutta Goswami is repeating second time. So first time was Sukadeva Goswami speaking to Parikshit Maharaj, and in the assembly of all the sages, and there were very great, great sages there. Almost everyone, all the Saptarishis, Narad Muni himself was there. And when Sukadeva Goswami was speaking, so speaker does not need to be necessarily the elderly, but it's a question of who is most realized. So all the sages at the time agreed that Shukadeva Goswami is the right person to answer the questions. And the question also, the Parikshit Maharaj's questions was so beautiful. He's the ideal seeker. So he perfected the art of asking questions, so inquisitiveness. And following the etiquette, we discussed that. So, so what happens when there is this correct combination of the speaker and the seeker? And in that correct combination, in that that exchange of the right mood, then Krishna advents through the words of the Srimad Bhagavatam and of the speaker, and then it registers in the heart of the seeker or the listener. And what happens then is when the message goes and Krishna advents, I mean the listener experience the ecstasy, and this is the ecstasy that Shaunaka Rishi is experiencing. And then what happens in that ecstasy, the listener becomes very happy. Because Krishna is happy, is pleased, the listener also becomes pleased. This is the, this is also real, this is the realization, really. That's what it means, that so we are realizing, we are understanding, and we feel the happiness that, because Krishna is feeling happiness. And we experience that, like we hear classes from, when there are some really good speakers come, we hear from them. He speaks so satisfied, so happy. And that means the connection has established. So the humility of the seeker as well is very important. The humility of the person who is listening is able to connect. So it becomes, like it said that when in a fertile soil only the seed can sprout, like that. So the fertility is really the humility is required. And then the realization is possible. Yeah. And the impact of that realization is what? So there could be, if it is not realized, like we discussed, like it is like Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. So Mananam is that, that churning inside. And then we, as Prabhupada would say, then we start to live the verses that we hear, live the preaching that we hear. Like one person came to Srila Prabhupada and say, I can recite the whole Bhagavad Gita in like 30 minutes, something like that. And but Prabhupada, asked him one question, which he was stunned when Prabhupada asked him, can you live one verse? You can chant the whole 700 verses in 30 minutes, but can you live one verse? So this realization for us is the transformation. Otherwise, it remains information. So how we can move from just, gathering the information, because this is it's a weapon of mass distraction. It is said lots of information in today's time. But what really makes the transformation is the real information, or is the real understanding of the scriptures. And then I was going to do a little bit, now it's 12, 20, 35. A little bit of interactive session. Some of you, if you can participate, that will be great, if you are able to. So what is the symptoms of realization that we are experiencing something? What are those symptoms, or how do we know something is changing in our heart? Yeah. So today, actually, someone sent me an article on the different emotions that can cause anger. I read those emotions. I was thinking, wow, this is actually exactly opposite of what emotion we experience in Krishna consciousness. So I've made some points, and maybe if some of you can share. So first thing I was writing was like, when we are in Krishna consciousness and we have that, in that class that we get some realization, first thing we get is a feeling of peace. the peaceful thought. Krishna says, what's the peace formula? Bhoktaram being tapasam, sarva lokam maheshwaram, suridam sarva bhutanam, gyatva mam shantim richati. This is the peace formula Prabhupada says. Yeah, suridam sarva bhutanam. So we are all trying to enjoy, yeah, but we are not able to. But Krishna says, Bhoktaram yajna tapasam sarva lokam maheshwaram. I am the one who is the recipient. I am the bhokta. I am the one who is enjoying all the yajna and tapasa, all the sacrifices, all the austerities, the results. He is the one enjoyer, and he is the sarva loka maheshwara. He is the Lord of all, everything. Sarva loka maheshwara, all the places. But what is the peace formula there? We are not able to enjoy. He is enjoying. He is the owner of everything, but he is suridam sarva bhutana. Yeah, so when we feel peaceful, when we say one who is the owner of everything, he's enjoying, but he's suridam. Like suridam means he is the how do you say, well-wisher of everyone, and sarva bhuta of everyone. And knowing that, we feel peaceful. So this is like a feeling of peace that we get. We just, when we hear in the right mood. It is otherwise. I know some people when we present say, why is Krishna saying he's the one enjoy? He's the one, he's the one who should be worshipped. Some people ask me a lot of times, say, but actually he's saying that because understanding that will give us happiness. And it is true. We feel more peaceful when we know we are not the enjoyer. It's actually amazing. It's a paradigm in, what Sutta Prabhu was saying in one presentation, like the paradigm shift. Paradox, sorry, he was saying the paradox of different things. So this is feeling of peace, yeah. And now the other aspect that I was thinking is feeling of encouragement, yeah. When we hear Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, we feel encouraged and feel like Krishna's words, Shikram Bhavati Dharmatma, Saswat Shanti Nikachati, Kaunteya Prati Jani, Name Bhakta Pranashati. So Krishna, Shikram Bhavati Dharmatma, quickly he will become a devotee, a great soul, Dharmatma. Saswat Shanti Nikachati, yeah? Very quickly he will attain peace. So this is like so much encouraging words. Yeah. Likewise, there is feeling of security. Mamupete Punarjanma, Dukhalayam Ashvasatam. So we hear like this world is a place of misery. But Krishna gives what security? Napnuvanti Mahatmana. Some say Dhim Paramam Gata. If you come to my place, Mamupete Punarjanma. When we come to Krishna's place, there is no coming back to this place of.
Prabhu, could you mute everyone else's mics? I think somebody's mic is on. There's a lot of background interference.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you. I was thinking it was just my mic. Thank you. So, so feeling of, I lost my, feeling of, sorry, I'm going to open that one. Yeah. Feeling of security. Feel secured. Now, feeling of relief. One class I was hearing, the speaker is speaking, and there are these two fat persons come and sit in the class, and the speaker, like it's very common to say that we are not this body, we are the soul. And the one fat person says to the other one, "Did you hear that?" So kind of thing, a feeling of relief. Wow, that's a relief. But can anyone say what is your feeling of relief? Did you ever feel relieved of anything? Saying, after hearing this, I feel very relieved. Any experience anyone could share? Or any thought? Yeah, sorry, I'm putting him on a spot, but we'll get something, that's fine. But I'll tell you what I was thinking. When I heard that, I heard this in a class, and when I heard this feeling of relief, I was thinking, what is my feeling of relief in Krishna consciousness? And what occurred to me was like when we are in the material world, and there is always so much competition. so much limited resources and a lot of people chasing. There is a lot of demand and little supply most of the time, or maybe it's created like that, but situation is like that, and we are all chasing. But when we come to Krishna consciousness, when we realize, I thinking, actually Krishna is unlimited. So Krishna's services are unlimited. Yeah, and Krishna can have one-to-one relationship with every living entity. He can appear to a devotee the way a devotee would like to have a relationship with Krishna. I was feeling, wow, this is amazing, that there is no limitation. This is unlimited. This is the unlimited Krishna consciousness. I was feeling relieved, otherwise I feel so pressure. I thought there's so much to do, and I don't know where I am. I may have so many faults, like they said, we may have so many faults, but Krishna still accepts it. Does not mean that we carry on with what we lacking or what is incorrect. Does not need to be corrected, but in a way that allows us to appreciate ourselves for who we are, and then we can move forward. Yeah, that feeling of worthiness, like I'm worthy of something. The Krishna wants me. I'm worthy. A feeling of worthiness, like this, feel so happy. And feeling of being loved. The Krishna loves me. Devotees love me. We come to the feeling of being loved, feeling of belongingness. Otherwise, there can be loneliness in this world. There's so much loneliness. There's so much, people feel like they are alone. There's no one to care for them. We come in the assembly of devotees that Prabhupada has created, and we feel like we belong to someone. Like Krishna says, I am the seed-giving father of everyone. So we know, okay, I belong to Krishna. You get feeling of joy, enthusiasm, feeling of gratitude. Feeling of gratitude gives us happiness. It's amazing. When we glorify other life, when one time, I say that many times actually, we did a session of expressing our gratitude, and then glorifying, and glorification at different levels. And some glorification can be multiple ways. Like one is like someone has done something for us to feel grateful. But the higher than that is someone we feel grateful, even if that is not directly related to us. Someone is doing something for someone else, which is also like we feeling grateful. This is amazing. So all these different, emotions, different, emotions and different experience, different feelings that we get. I said, feeling of peace, feeling of encouragement, feeling of security, feeling of worthiness, feeling of being loved, belongingness, joy, enthusiasm, like we get happiness from somewhere. We sit in a kirtan or in a class, suddenly feel happy. Wow, where is that coming from? So all these are wonderful gifts that we actually receive in Krishna consciousness. And if we're not receiving it, sorry to now come up with a negative, but there can be at the same time, we may feel sometimes remorse, or we may feel sad. And this is the completely opposite of feeling joy. We're feeling remorse like some guilt feeling, or why am I like this? This is like self-centeredness, and this is not the emotion that we should be having. If those emotions come up, then we say, okay, there's something missing in my hearing, or something missing in my practice. Yeah, or we feel depressed, we feel lonely, or we feel fearful. Like one assembly, Prabhupada would say, some devotees ask Prabhupada, like, what is this experience of spirituality? And Prabhupada says, yeah, it's fearlessness. You feel fearless. And people, devotees assembled there, they actually, on that statement, they actually felt fearless. So these opposite emotions, when we get, then we should just alert ourselves. Okay, maybe I need to improve my hearing, or increase my hearing, or chanting, or reading, whatever inspires us in Krishna consciousness, we increase that. But otherwise, if we're just following the process, there's no way we will have any of those emotions of anger or any of those things building up, because we're just so busy feeling grateful, feeling love, feeling belonging, feeling worthy, feeling secured. There's no way we can get anything else but just the happiness. So if you have anything like that, maybe you can share. It's just 8:45, so I'll just stop speaking, and maybe you can share yours. Any realizations or any other aspects, or maybe any questions that we can take. Sorry, it was like a lot of things I probably said at the same time. I'm sorry, I'm struggling to. Yeah, I'm here now. Yes. Hare Krishna. Any realizations? Any thoughts? Sorry, it was too heavy, was it? Everything was quiet. There was this also a pastime of Rupa Goswami and Jiva Goswami. So there was one time, there was this Digvijay Pandit. His name is Digvijay Pandit. Digvijay means in all directions he's won everyone. He's the best. He's understood everything. He's very proud of his knowledge, learning. He comes in, he was going around and seeking everyone's signature as to, okay, we will debate in scriptures and we will then, decide who is the winner, who can win in the arguments, like that. And Digvijay Pandit comes to Vrindavan and he finds out that Rupa Goswami, Srila Rupa Goswami is the most learned here. So he goes to find Srila Rupa Goswami and says, I'm here, I'm Digvijay, I've won everywhere, and I would like to debate with you. If you don't want to debate with me, you sign this, Vijay Patra, you can sign this, that you have lost. So Srila Rupa Goswami is saying, I was thinking there's no point of wasting time in debating. He immediately says, yeah, give me, I don't want to debate with you, just give me your, paper, I'll sign it, that I accept my defeat, please carry on. So this, he became even more pride, wow, defeated, Rupa Goswami. Then someone told him, Jiva Goswami is also very learned. So he goes around to find Jiva Goswami. And he finds him somewhere near the Yamuna. And then Jiva Goswami, he meets Jiva Goswami, says, this, I've already had a meeting with Rupa Goswami and he's accepted his defeat. Look at this, he signed his paper. So now Jiva Goswami was, a disciple of Rupa Goswami. So he became angry, rightfully, because he cannot tolerate the insult of a spiritual master. He said, there is no way you can defeat, Rupa Goswami, because first of all, you defeat his disciple. If you defeat me, then we'll see. So then there was a discussion between them. I'll not go into detail, but eventually this Digvijay Pandit accepted defeat from Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami was very, very learned. He was extremely talented, intellectual. I mean, they are from spiritual world, so there's nothing impossible for them. But then Rupa Goswami came to know this is what has happened. So Rupa Goswami became very angry with Jiva Goswami. He actually banished him from Braj. In Braj, this behavior that you did, was showing of pride, was not good of your knowledge, of your learning, of your speaking. So he was, he was banished from the Braj. So he was outside in Mathura, he was performing tapasya, Jiva Goswami was performing tapasya. But then at that time, Sanatana Goswami, he came to know this what's happened, and Jiva Goswami is performing lots of austerities outside the Braj. So then he went to Rupa Goswami and said, Rupa, there are three principles that we live on. The principle of chanting of the holy names, Krishna Nam, Vaishnava Seva, and Jivadaya. So you're doing very nicely. You are, you're doing Krishna Nam and you're doing Vaishnava Seva. But it seemed like you forgot on Jivadaya. Jivadaya is compassion on living entities. So, but Rupa Goswami could follow what he was saying, immediately remembered Jiva. Jiva Goswami went and fetched him like that. That was another, just an example that we see from the scriptures. Okay. there's a one question on the topic of which you said feeling at peace. How important are social interactions in spirituality or religion? Social interactions are most important. We can, with the purpose of spirituality or, all discourse of the Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, because we only, we feel happiness, we feel happy, we feel at peace in the association of devotees. So this social interaction means not for the purpose of, just social like chit-chatting, or maybe, if we discuss, it's amazing how if we discuss anything which is not Krishna consciousness, it actually creates disturbance of the mind. And there's so much going on outside the world, and this religion is, is speaking against that religion is speaking that religion, this person is speaking that, is so much. So we don't do all that. But in our interaction amongst the devotees, we just discuss spirituality and religion. We feel very peaceful automatically. So yeah, spiritual is very important. Social interaction is very important. In the association only we progress. In the association we learn, we exchange our thoughts, and we learn, and we enjoy. Tushyanti cha ramanti cha, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. So we feel great satisfaction discussing Krishna's pastimes. This is how it is. Thank you. Hare Krishna. No more questions. Shailesh Prabhu, I'm waiting to hear from you. Or Santosh Mataji, any points? Sorry, it was too heavy or something.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanavad Pranam Yogesh Prabhupada. Thank you for a wonderful class. Your realizations are far more powerful and important than anything I have to offer today. So nothing from me today, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
But thank you for a wonderful class.
Thank you for kind words. Okay then. All right. Thank you so much, devotees, for tolerating me. Hare Krishna. Jantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Thank you for nice
Prabhuji.
class. Hare
Very nice
Krishna.
class. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Thank you. Haribo.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna.